Hello and welcome to Chronicles of a Daisy. My name is Emily Daisy Gasca, and thank you so much for being here with me today. Today, I have the honor of interviewing La Maestra Brenda Perez Mendoza, and she is a educator, she's a author, she is a mama, and she is a mujer valiente, and she is here today to share with us a little bit about her journey and a little bit about who she is and to empower all of us in her journey and sharing her testimony. And I just want to invite her to the stage and open up this opportunity for her to share as we are Chronicles of a Daisy is on a mission to cultivating a environment for women and our future generations that's filled with love, with joy, with peace, and with patience. So today, without a further ado, let's welcome.
Hola, ¿cómo están todos? How is everyone doing? So excited to be here. It is such an honor. I have waited so long to be on this podcast, so I'm excited, very excited. Yes, so my name is Brenda Perez Mendoza, and can't wait to talk about my journey. I am a K through 12 ELL specialist. Been working with ELL students, predominantly bilingual students, for over 16 years. And I also am a mama, and that really is, I think, my first responsibility and my biggest calling. I think it was becoming a mom. And I called my students my children too. So every year I get a new set of students, but I pour into them so much that they really build this amazing community. And I think that everything that I've ever done has been through certain values. And just jumping into that real quick is one of my values is obviously, am I going to learn from this experience? So I like to take on lots of different challenges, lots of different experiences to see if I'm going to grow as a learner. Because as a teacher, I forever want to keep learning. I don't know everything. Yeah. So that's one of my things. So everything gets funneled through these values. Am I going to learn from this experience? So if I am, then I'm definitely going to partake in it. Another one of my values is it going to help the community? Is it in some way going to inspire someone, empower someone, and impact the community? If it is, then I want to be a part of it. And the last one, is it what's best for children? And it always goes back to that. And I think that's the strongest value I have. Is it going to be what's best for children? And if it is what's best for children, then I'm behind it 100%. And so that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you. Gracias for sharing, a little bit about who you are, your beliefs, your core values, which is so important because as I'm creating this ecosystem and community of educators and mamas that it's important to continue to build community and collaboration with women who are on the same mission, but also have their different ways of viewing and seeing things. Because I think that the beauty of us as educators, mamas, and most importantly, as women, like, mujeres are amazing, and we have so many beautiful gifts and talents, and I love to see how we unite together to share to share with others, and to show how empowering it is when we get together and we share and build something that is going to impact the future generations and leave a legacy, because ultimately, we are the ones who are guiding and creating what our future holds by how we teach, how we raise them, how we talk to them, how we handle situations. So thank you so much for sharing that. And Brenda, you have an amazing story to share with us. You talked a little bit about being a mama and an educator. And I know that when we spoke, we talked about one of the most challenging parts of being an educator, and that happens, I think, in a very pivotal point in our lives, our careers and our personal lives, where we may be confronted with some challenges. And can you share a little bit about the crossroads as an educator? And how did you navigate through that? And how did you use that painful experience, those challenges, to really identify and help you walk in your purpose and a new destiny?
Okay, let's get into it. So, if I have to really just pinpoint a moment in time that just impacted my entire life and purpose, I go back to my first year in school, which was in kindergarten. I spoke Spanish first, and I know it was really important for my parents for me to speak English, but I know that Spanish was my first language. And my parents, they at the time, they worked and lived in Pilsen, but I know that they wanted a better opportunities for me. I'm first generation here in the US. So it was really, I was setting the stage for future generations. And so it was like a
Love it.
whole lot of pressure. Like, okay, all right, awesome. But you felt that like you were going to be setting up the stage for everybody else. As a little 5-year old who didn't know very much English, I was put into a school in the Cicero School District. And at the time, Cicero School District was not diverse. And I was the only Spanish speaking brown skinned girl. And it was like a shock to my system because as a 5-year old, you're not expecting to walk into a place where everybody is extremely different from you. You're at home. Everyone speaks the language you speak. Everyone looks like you. Your primo, your prima, everybody. Dios, everybody looks like you. But then you go into this new environment. Not only is it extremely stressful for a child to start kindergarten and leave their family for like probably the first time, but then not being able to speak the language. And I think that that impacted me so much that I carried all those experiences with me. The fact that there was no support for me, there was no support for my parents, there was no English language teachers. And I just felt like this sense of this is unfair, right? And for a 5-year old to be going through all these thoughts, it's a lot. So as the years went on, Cicero did become more diverse and there were more Spanish speaking families and students. And the thing is, in all my time in school, there were no teachers of color. There were no teachers that spoke Spanish. And so it wasn't until I got to college that I started having teachers that looked like me in higher ed. And I was just shocked by it all the time. Like, why aren't there more Hispanic teachers? Why aren't there more like native Spanish speaking teachers? And it was quite the struggle. So my life mission became, I think the first hurdle was I needed to find a way to become a teacher, but not only a teacher, I really wanted to be a bilingual teacher. And that was so important to me because I said, I need to be able to be like an advocate or like a protector of all of these children that are walking into the classroom. I'm going to get choked up.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful to see how you allowed your personal what you went through to be that voice for your students. And that's important. I think that every one of us as educators and mamas in the classroom, what we see is us in our students. Like we become the educators that we need.
That yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And that you said it. We needed to become who we wish we had when we were kids in school. And I think that it's super empowering to the new generations and to their families to be able to have teachers that are diverse, teachers that do speak their language. But the fight to get to that point, not only was it a struggle for me to just get into the right teaching program because there weren't very many bilingual teacher certification programs. It was like ESL. and you're just put into that category where ESL's different than being a biliterate teacher who's teaching two languages fluently to children. Like you are biliterate. And so there was no programs that were actually like focusing on what I needed and what I wanted. So I did have to get the K through 12 ELL specialist certification. That was my degree, and my concentration was ESL. But then I had to get my bilingual endorsement. And I remember how much of a challenge even just the test was, because yes, I was a native Spanish speaker, but these are tests designed by people that aren't necessarily coming with our background and our experiences. So then not only are the questions asked during the assessment for the bilingual certification complicated, because now they're asking you to speak about education in Spanish. And this is now you're looking for academic language in
Yes.
Spanish.
Oh my goodness.
And I don't know that. I was like, oh my goodness, this was like my first realization where it's, wow, I can speak Spanish, but not academic Spanish. And that's a whole other, like, how do I even say it? It was just like a whole other realization. Oh my goodness, like
It's
I don't have that background.
it's a whole nother realm. It's a whole nother set of language that we were not
Yes.
exposed to because like you said, bilingual education didn't exist when you were in kindergarten. That academic language is needed.
Yes. It, and I know I wasn't the only bilingual teacher that was so stressed out by this assessment. And I know that they've changed it so much, but 16 years ago when I took that assessment, I remember even having to write
Yes,
an entire essay
in Spanish.
in Spanish. And to be honest, and that it's important that everybody listening hears this, is it's absolutely necessary for you to accept failure as part of your learning process, and part of your success is you're going to fail, and you're going to fail a lot. And my first failure in education was not passing the bilingual test to get certified. And that was devastating because I knew this is what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be in an ESL classroom. I didn't want to be an ESL pull-out teacher, which essentially is taking the students out and working with them in a smaller setting, which is effective. That's not what I wanted. I really wanted to be in a sheltered bilingual classroom or in a dual language classroom. And so it was devastating not to be able to pass. So that was like the first hurdle. And it was one of many hurdles. I feel like once I did pass the test, I go into education as a new teacher. And then you realize that there is a new set of challenges, because now you again are the only teacher of color who speaks Spanish in the district. So
Wow.
now you're like, wait a minute. Not only was I the first Hispanic student in a kindergarten classroom, now I'm in a district that isn't very diverse, but was starting at the time, 16 years ago. At the time, was starting to have such a diverse population, and it was happening fast. There was a lot of migrant children, a lot of migrant families coming in, and they desperately, because that's what they told me. We need you. We need someone who's able to communicate with families. We need you to be able to communicate with the children. And so I was ready, and I went into this very positive, very excited, but not realizing that the colleague that I had weren't accepting of me. They weren't. And that there was even just jealousy because of the relationships that I would build with the families. I remember they're like, I'm the classroom teacher. And I'm like, I understand, but they feel more comfortable coming to me and talking about that. And we built that type of relationship where that was what felt comfortable and natural to them. And I'm not surprised. I would be more comfortable talking to someone who probably sounds and looks like me more. And That first year as a first year teacher was my second hurdle. I was let go from that position. And not because I didn't do my job, it was just because I didn't fit in. That's what I was told. I was not the right fit for that building. And
Wow.
then following year, I was replaced with a non-native speaker. She learned Spanish in high school and then went and traveled to Spain. So now she's teaching our children, right? Remember the academic Spanish. We don't have that. Now she's teaching them academic Spaniard Spanish from Spain. And I was just like, my babies, right? Because you feel like your students are your children and the families and like you let them down, but really it was the system that let them down. And I had to be replaced by someone who is not didn't look like my students, didn't look like my families, and wasn't a native Spanish speaker. But they preferred that because that was more comfortable for them at that time to have someone that represented more the gen ed teachers than our families. So that literally set up just my life's mission to fight injustices, to fight for equity, to advocate for Latinos, to advocate for our students, to advocate for bilingual education. But really, it was all these two big core experiences that shaped who I was going to eventually become.
That's beautiful how you're able to share that, and even as you're sharing it, it brings back those vivid feelings and emotions. And I think that it's sometimes as women, we think we have to be strong or we have to put on this front or we have to show up because if we don't, then who will? But we also have to be transparent and vulnerable. And as educators, we become moms. They become our children to our students. We become their nurses. We become their doctors, their lawyers, their advocates. We play every role. And we make they say that we make more life decisions than an actual doctor does because of the dynamics of the environment, how many students, and each one has a different, unique background, even if they come from the same country or the same community.
Yes.
Like, the dynamics are still so complex that you have to really learn who is this child and their family. What do they believe in?
Absolutely.
And one of the things that I wanted to highlight about your story and your testimony is how you came to these different crossroads and they did not define you. They actually inspired you. And you've been able to create something that not a lot of women and women of color have been able to accomplish, and especially educators. And this is what we need in our school systems. There's so many faulty foundations to the education system. And especially because it's not designed for our actual students' uniqueness, diversity, and individuality to thrive. So, as educators, we have to figure everything out because that's a natural instinct. But can you share a little bit more about that how that pain that you felt, what did it birth? Because it birthed something amazing, and I want our listeners and our audience to really be inspired by your story and your testimony, because sometimes women, we tend to hide. We tend to let that make us feel like it isolates us, and we feel like we're alone, and what can we do? And we just start to feel that, like, we even start to feel some kind of, like, self-rejection. "Oh, we're not good enough." Like,
Yes, imposter syndrome.
yep.
Imposter syndrome. Oh, wow. And that is really something that I think for a long time I struggled with. In the beginning, I had all these challenges, right? And all these hurdles. But then when I moved to a new district, that district was more embracing of my differences. And they really celebrated who I was. And because they celebrated who I was, because they supported me, because they really wanted all their teachers to shine, I was able to start really working with families and children in a way that I had never been able to before. And I'm still in that district to this day, but I remember it was the first time that I was offered an actual bilingual dual language position. And I wanted to do that. I wanted to teach kids to read. I wanted to teach families how to teach their children to read. And so we went on a journey together. I remember I worked really hard on my first master's, and it was all focused. My research was focused on family literacy. So reading is another huge passion for me. And researching reading is just essential if you want to understand what's not only happening in the publishing companies with children's literature, but understand what's happening with just the books that our children are exposed to and reading. It wasn't until my own child was 12 years old, he's in middle school, and he told me, Mom, like, I'm in middle school and I still haven't read a book by anyone that's like me. And that took me through an experience to really research that. And we had a conversation about this last week, right? The fact that there is an infographic on children's literature and the publishing companies and how few authors of color exist, and then even fewer books that are written for specific for Latino children. Now, they always say books are right mirrors. They should be mirrors, right? But I can go back to all my education and never had the experience of seeing myself in a book. So I didn't have mirrors growing up. And that to me was alarming. And sure enough, the research supports it. They say that there is literally only 5%. This was in 2018. I would hope that we have maybe improved a little bit. But from 2018, there was only 5% of children's literature that represented Hispanic characters or Hispanic families or Hispanic customs, and even less that were written in Spanish. And the fact that the infographic talked about how 20% of books in children's literature represent animals. So more books about animals and animal characters and animal families than Latino families, than Latino children, than mirrors for us and our children. And the desperation, there were times, I'm not kidding when I tell you that it was sometimes just hard to sleep knowing this is the world that I am going to leave my children, where they don't see themselves in books. And so, as you were talking earlier, we as Latinas, we're building our own networks. We're building our own connections because we don't have those. We don't have the luxury of having been in this country for so many years that we have this large network of people. Oh, I'm going to reach out to my cousin who's a publisher, or we don't have these connections. Like, we're making them. And I think, like, through Chicago Latina Moms, like, definitely we've been able to connect with so many moms and I've learned from so many different women and so many amazing women who did so many amazing things. And through that, I feel has made like a big impact on what I believed I could do. Like, it almost because I saw everyone being able to accomplish their dreams, right? And see all these Latina women who were so passionate and so empowered. I can do it. I can do hard things too. But it's because we're building this network of Latina women and we're all supporting each other. We're not blocking people from success. If anything, I don't know how many times I want to bring people with me on this journey. And so I'm, I'm trying to get to the point where I'm trying to explain how I got into the publishing industry, which to me, I just think like things always happen for a reason. And in 2015, I remember like just accidentally like coming to a magazine of this organization. It was ASCD. And my professor, Latino, Dr. Medina, shout out. I'm pretty sure he's going to hear this as soon as it's out. He'll be like, he's my
Love
biggest
it,
cheerleader.
love it.
He's wonderful. Yep. He definitely inspired everything that he is. I've taken lots of it into the classroom and I tell him that all the time. So Dr. Medina, I remember oh, this organization is amazing. You have to join it, this and that. And I was like, oh, no, I don't have at the time it was maybe like $120 to become a member. But I did it. I did it. I listened to him. I said, okay, maybe I'll learn something. And sure enough, I'm not kidding. There was like an opportunity to write a proposal for an idea. And I really wanted to do these family workshops and teach children and parents at the same time about family literacy and how to teach their children to read. And Dr. Adita's like, you have to write to them, see what they say. And I remember getting a letter back and they wanted me to write an article for their magazine for ASCD. And I was just like, wow, okay, that was the first time that I'm like, I get to write. And then they invited me to apply for this internship it's called Emerging Leaders. So I filled it out, right? I took it on. I said, I already was feeling empowered and was like, okay, I can do this. So I went ahead and filled this out. And I remember I think I waited about maybe 6 months, but I was accepted into that program.
Yay!
And it literally changed my life like that,
Wow,
because
that open door.
what they were oh, that
Mhm.
first open door, and it wasn't the last open door, but
That's the
through
key.
there
I
mhm,
wanna really that's the key right there. When the door opens and, like you just described, this is something you're like, alright, let me do it, like" and that opened up the door to so many possibilities. So I want to really acknowledge that and shout it because so many women, especially educators and mamas, we will pause or freeze and just be like, "No, I'm not good enough. No, I'm not. No," because of that imposter syndrome and feeling like we already predetermined, "Oh, it's gonna be a rejection. It's not that they're not gonna be chosen."
that's how it and it's not only Latino women, I've had a lot of Hispanic men, a lot of Latino men, the same mindset where, "Why should I even try? Like,
Yes.
why am I gonna try?" And so many things go unsaid, so many projects go uncreated just because you already think that you can't. And that mindset is really
Mhm.
important. And we have to change that narrative. As Latino women, it is literally our responsibility to build those bridges, to take on those challenges and to do it. Were built for that. And we got to walk through that door. Once it's open, don't think about it too much. You got to go through it. You have to, because there's going to be more doors
I
that
love
are going
it.
to open. And the
I love it.
possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
They're endless.
Yes, they are. I love it. I love it. Say it for the people in the back because that's exactly why community is so important. Like you said, you shared earlier, you need to be around people who see that greatness in you so they can empower you, they can pour into you, they can uplift you and remind you of who you really are. I love it.
Absolutely.
Thank you
Absolutely.
for just really nailing it with that. Like that alone, oh my gosh. One open door can open up so many possibilities. And like you said, the limit is It's endless.
It really is. And once you actually believe that you can do big things, like no one can really stop you. Can't. They could try,
Right.
but at that point, you're like,
That's it.
no, I've already done really hard things.
Mhm.
I've already gone through really traumatic experiences and I'm still here and I'm still pushing through. And no, I'm not stopping. I'm not stopping. I'm going to keep going. And every time I see that door open, I'm going to walk through it. And sometimes it might not lead to anywhere you think, but I'm telling you that one conversation with my professor to become a member of ASCD, to then them asking me to write for them, to them asking me to apply for an internship. That internship who literally opened me up to a whole world of educators across the US, where I found people just like me, at same passion, same struggles. And that's where we all unified and we're like, this is a safe space. And because of all them, more opportunities came. I I mean, I ended up doing, gosh, I mean, I've gotten some awards and I don't even want to like
No,
so
no.
much on that,
Let's
but
stop. We are not gonna allow you to act, "Oh, just gotten some award." No.
a little award here
You
and
are
there.
going to look at what that open door led to. It led you on a journey of healing. It led you on a journey of exposure. It led you on a journey of discovering a new passion, and it's like layers that you didn't even know you had. It led you to your destiny, right? Because life is a de is we have destiny, and we go from destination to destination. This is just the beginning, and it let
So
those awards mean something. Not every educator or teacher can say they have awards, but we all have the ability to receive them.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
as you
Absolutely.
share the awards you received, it's really good to be humble, but you also have to know, "No, I deserve that." Like, I got an award for just show people that it's beautiful to but we should not downplay or, "Oh, no, I
Right.
want you to really embrace that, and when you and share with us, 'I received the award,' and we can celebrate you because that is what this ecosystem is all about, and the community, right? We're empowering each other. Maestra Brenda was able to accomplish that. Oh my god, it's possible, and look at what it's done for her."
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I remember that opportunity was through a non for profit organization, and they were recognizing Latinx educators. And I remember my son was actually the person who nominated me for that award. It was like the Educator of the Year Impact Award. So they talked about impacting communities, impacting students and families. And so I had talked about the research that I had been working on that I was so passionate about literacy, language, and culture. And then I also started talking about and toying with the idea, especially during the pandemic, that because there wasn't enough books that were mirrors for our children, that I needed to write some books. And I remember there's a quote, and I know I'm probably not going to say it properly, but it is almost like it says, if there isn't a book that's written, then you need to write it.
Yes.
Absolutely. And my own students, and I always credit them because I taught first grade, I taught kindergarten, I taught second grade, but it wasn't until I moved up to fourth grade that the children were just so curious about who they were and their culture and they felt so comfortable speaking to me and asking me questions that I never thought like kids that are 9 years old would be thinking, but they were so curious. I remember we would have a restorative circle. And back then this was a couple of years ago. And so stuff like conscious discipline and restorative circles wasn't and social emotional learning, it really wasn't super popular. Like now, everybody talks about restorative circles and social emotional learning. But back then it was really just starting. And I remember, again, here's ASCD, them, they were always in the front lines of really innovative things in education. They talked about growth mindset. I remember this was like, oh my gosh, 10 years ago. And amazing things that were coming out of this organization. But so my students, I remember we'd sit in these restorative circles and we'd talk about our feelings and we'd talk about like their families and sometimes if they were feeling stressed and what was stressing them out or if they had a hard morning and what kind of caused it. And I remember through those discussions, children would ask questions like, one of the questions that kept coming up is, I hear the word Hispanic all the time. I hear the word Latino, Latina all the time. What does that mean?
Wow. Aw.
And I'm like, oh my goodness.
You don't
Like I had a revelation.
Mhm.
I was like, if my 9-year-olds have no idea like who they are,
Wow.
I'm like, is there like something I can give them, like a resource I can give them to help them with that? And there wasn't. There wasn't. There, I mean, there would be articles. I'd look through Scholastic, nothing. No one that was creating literature for children had the answer to that for my students. So I started writing these questions down because I'm like, they're good. And I'm going to research them.
Wow.
And I'm going to find a way to
Wow.
teaching this because there isn't. Oh, wait, there isn't anything, with no resources for me
Wow.
to help you understand that. And I remember the kids would talk about like DACA because that was during Trump's presidency. So that came up a lot. They would hear dreamers and DACA all the time. And they were just curious. And they're like, what is that? What's a dreamer? It sounds cool. And they're
Right.
9 years old. They'd be like, this sounds awesome. I want to be a
Yep.
dreamer. And I remember one conversation with one of my students once that like they were so sad because they're like, I don't have documents. So my parents said, because I don't have documents, I'm probably not going to be able to go to college.
Oh, wow.
And a 9-year-old, the weight
Mm.
of that on a 9-year-old, oh my goodness. And again, no resources for me to explain to
Mhm.
them what it meant to be undocumented. And that's when they came up with questions like, I've heard the word illegal. What does that mean? Am I illegal? These are questions that 9-year-olds have. And because I would write these questions down, because I went through that rabbit hole of researching, it was only natural that they would actually become books. It just made sense. There needed to be these resources needed to exist, and I needed to write them.
I love how you saw a problem and you created a solution. And you just explained a process for so many people. Like, so many people are now gonna be inspired by this. You saw the problem, you had a classroom, which we all do. If we are teachers or we are in a school setting, even our own children,
Yes,
right? They're so curious. They're always asking questions instead of be like, "Hi, yeah, all these questions." Like, why are they asking these questions? Let's dig deeper. You just gave
absolutely.
people a framework to be able to find solutions for problems that, like you said, our children have.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is amazing. That is amazing. And that is exactly what we need to be empowered and to show people look at how simple it can be. If we allow ourselves to get past those negative beliefs, that negative mindset, because the brain is wired to think negatively. And we have to choose. We have the willpower to choose. Okay, I see this obstacle. I see this challenge. I see there's no solution to this problem. What am I going to do? Am I just going to keep dismissing it and be just trying to find an answer for these children? Or be like, and explain it in our own language? Or are we going to take this challenge, take this obstacle, and write it down and let our curiosity, our creativity juices flow to bring a solution to the children or people sometimes that need these
It,
answers?
and it's been such an amazing experience because I've had parents who are like, I'm buying the book for me because I don't have the answers. to those questions
So
either.
true. Yes, and that yes, because it starts with the adults. A lot
And
of
I was like,
times,
wow, like,
there isn't that
I don't know.
language.
Yeah. And it didn't exist. And because of going back to my core values is what's best for children and knowing that I believe in my students and I know that I'm responsible to empower them, not only empower them, but to prepare them for the future. I really took serious their curiosity, their questions. And I would like to say that it overnight, ooh, I was published overnight. No, that research
Never
sat
overnight.
in a notebook for years, for years. And, but when you have that little, just that feeling that's constantly coming up and it's constantly keeping you up at night and it's constantly calling you, like you have to do something about it. And you might not have the know how, you might not have the connection or the network or the right people to go to because you're
Come
not
on,
well
Brenda.
connected, but you're going to find a way. You're going to find a way. And someone somewhere is going to say yes. And I think after 4 or 5 years, finally, someone said yes. And they saw the potential in the project. They knew that it needed to exist. And it happened so fast that they were like, okay, can you start writing like tomorrow? And I'm like, "Mm."
I'm sorry, I'm
I
just
could not believe it.
right,
I
this is
just could not believe.
amazing.
I'm like, what? Like I had waited 5 years to hear that. And now it's here. And I said, all right. So as a working mom, as a teacher, I had to carve out space and time to be able to write, to take all this research and turn it into a series because it is a 6 book series. And I remember just so many people being just so happy and supportive. But then there was also the naysayers and the people who were like, how do you do it all? How do you do it all? Like, how were you able to do it all? Like almost doubting, right? You must not be doing something if you're writing books. Like you must be like maybe neglecting your children or not really giving your all to your students or something. Because how is it possible? And I'm like, no, everything is possible if you can manage your time and your priorities. Lots of people love spending hours and hours, right? 8 hours sometimes I've seen on my phone on social media. Okay. That's time,
Yep,
right?
very
You could
valuable.
1 hour of that social media time. Guess what? You could have written some, you could have created something, or you started a business or something, anything. But it's like you have to really be honest with yourself and say, how am I going to make time? You can definitely make time. Don't watch that one show you were watching. Don't be on social media so much. There are things you can cut out. And as soon as my kiddos went to sleep, guess what? I was writing. I was up writing. Every chance I got, we'd go on vacation. I'd be sitting by the pool and I'm watching them, but I'm writing. There is a way to get things done, but you have to be willing to make the sacrifices. Yes, it's more comfortable for me to just say, hey, let somebody else solve this problem. But then, like, how do I grow as a person? Where's my growth? Where's my leveling up? I don't think any of that would have happened had I not taken that one chance. Oh, I think you could even go further back when I failed that first bilingual certification test and said, oh, I'm going to take it again and again until I pass it. Like it
Yeah,
really was, you're not going to give up. You can't. That's not an option
I
to give up.
love it. Oh my goodness, Brenda, this has blessed me tremendously. This is amazing. I'm like, wow. It just, this has been a phenomenal 40 minutes. And I know this is gonna bless and free so many of our listeners because there's so many who needed to hear this, so many to know somebody else has walked this path, and it's not that hard. It's not that just don't give up on yourself. Don't give up
Can't
on
give up.
yourself. Now, I'm gonna ask you, Brenda, before we go, what would be your one tip of advice for an inspiring author?
For an inspiring author, I would definitely say that each one of us has a story inside of us, each one of us. And it needs to be heard. It needs to be seen. It needs to be created. You need to give that idea, that story, a life. So please don't give up. Make sure that you give us your ideas, give us your dreams because we want them, especially us Latinas, us women, us moms, educators. We inspire each other. And I know that all these little tiny pieces of what I was able to do or accomplish, it's a lot of people involved that helped me get to that point. A lot of moms that inspired me, a lot of teachers that inspired me, a lot of writers that inspired me. So take that idea and bring it to life.
I love that. Oh my goodness. Thank you. Thank you. Is there any last thoughts or anything that you want to share for our listeners?
Just don't give up. Walk through that door. That's the first step.
Amen. I love that. Thank you so much, Brenda. Now, I know a lot of my listeners are not may not be familiar with you. So how can they find you? Where could they keep in touch, reach out? Would you please share that information so they know how to find you?
Absolutely. I do have Twitter and Facebook, but I'm most active on Instagram and it's at Maestra Mendoza. And I'm very active on there. People ask me questions all the time or they have ideas and I'm always receptive. I'm always willing to help. I know that there's another fellow educator who I met through Chicago Latina Moms, and she's an educator who's been wanting to be an author. And we've decided we're teaming up on a project. And so I'm not a gatekeeper. So it's you got a great idea. Let's talk about it on Instagram.
Go follow her. You will be so blessed as well. And thank you so much. Thank you, Brenda, for your time, for sharing, and for your words, because our words are so powerful. So thank you for sharing all the different dynamics of life that have brought you to where you are today. Thank you. Thank you for paving the way for so many and for sharing your story with us, sharing your testimony and inspiring so many. Thank you, thank you. But
And
thank you.
thank you for giving us this space to be able to do this because who would hear our stories if it wasn't for educators like you opening up the opportunities for us? So thank you.
Yes, thank you, thank you. It's all about uniting, collaborating, and one helping each other. So yes, building those ecosystems, that community. I love it. But all right. Thank you so much. And talk to everyone soon. Love you all. And please make sure you go follow Maestra Ben on Instagram and talk to y'all soon. Love you. Bye.
It was.